Did you know ASBN, America's Small Business Network, is now available on your TV? That's right. ASBN is now streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire Stick, and available for download in the App Store. Scan the QR code to download the ASBN app today. Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for watching another edition of The Small Business Show exclusively at ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Company and organizational culture are two components to a successful business. They shape how an organization operates and how its employees interact with one another. Joining us now to talk about this very important topic is former NFL and NBA executive, author, keynote speaker, and business coach, Mr. Paul Epstein. Paul has been featured on USA Today, ESPN, NBC, Entrepreneur, Fox Business, so many others, and now, to really top the list, ASBN.com. Right, Paul? Thank you so much for joining us today.
I love it, Jim. Fired up to be here.
You saved the biggest brand out there, for the last year, right?
No doubt.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Talk to us first and foremost a little bit about yourself for those few people out there that may not be as familiar with you and your brand as we are here at the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start off by saying that you said NFL and NBA executive, and at 5'9" and $170, unless I can kick the ball very far, I'm sorry to disappoint that I was not the athlete on the field or the court. But what I did, it was a crazy 15-year journey from an entry to an executive level in the sales and business development lane. And as you know, especially when you quote unquote sell the unsellable, because when I worked in LA, it wasn't the Lakers that brought me in, it was the other team in Staples Center. So it's a half empty building and you're selling the Clippers, the redheaded stepchild, and ESPN says you're the worst brand in sports. And then my second week on the job, Sports Illustrated says you're the worst franchise in sports history, and you got to sell that.
How do you sell that? Where do you begin, right?
Oh my! Well, we would need a much longer interview for that.
I can imagine.
I'll tell you though, it was the birthplace of what I call learning how to play offense in a defensive environment. Sure. So if we think of our environment, whether it's an economy, it's the pandemic, it's any form of hurdle, obstacle, or adversity that gets in between us and winning. That was really the table stakes for my 15-year run. So it was 3 NBA teams, NFL league office, and then the San Francisco 49ers. And if it wasn't for a life-changing retreat that I had while I was at the Niners, I thought I was a lifelong sports guy. It was a kid in a candy store, just total dream come true. But it was really the first time that I found myself. We go offside. I learned more about my why, my core values. I started to really tap into, you said culture, and I believe that culture is a competitive advantage. That's what I have seen and observed in the most high performance of industries.
Sure.
And I just got obsessed with the people side. And when I realized that my job was more strategy and less people, and the higher up a ladder that I go, it was going to become less people, more strategy. That's when I just doubled down and I bet on myself. And you mentioned the stuff I've been up to ever since. A 2-time best-selling author, keynote speaker, founder of a Win Monday community, podcast host. All the stuff that I do is in service of what I learned and gathered from my decade and a half in sports.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So let me ask you this. In your experience, how do you find organizational culture? Because it's so vitally important. But what's your definition of that?
Great question. And if you Google it, let me actually stop folks right there. Do not Google it. Because if you Google culture, you will find 1,000 different definitions and most of them are confusing as hell.
Sure.
So let me try to simplify this for everybody. Culture is how you show up.
Okay.
I define how you show up as your decisions, your behaviors, and your actions. Mm-hmm. And then I would multiply those things by consistency. Mm-hmm. In other words, show me how you're consistently making decisions inside of an organization. Show me the consistent behaviors inside of an organization. Mm-hmm. Show me how we're consistently taking action, or maybe what we're not acting on. And if you take decisions, behaviors, and actions, multiply them by consistency, that's how you show up. And how we show up is our culture.
Yeah, very, very good point. Very good description. Can you describe some key elements that make up a strong and healthy company culture? Because I know there's so many executives out there, and it's small business owners, medium-sized business owners. where that word culture comes up and they feel like, oh, I just got a knife in my ribs. I don't know that we're doing it right in our company. I'm not even so sure what right is, but everybody seems to be focused on trying to win in this area.
It's born from a question that I ask in almost every single workshop that I lead, which is, think of the greatest leader that you've ever had and what did they do? And I'll whiteboard out 20, 30, 40, 50 responses. And Jim, I'll tell you, there is a usual suspect that finishes in the top 5 responses about 90% of the time. And then there is a massive gap to second.
Yeah.
And that number 1 attribute is listening. Mm-hmm. And so if leaders, if we are the tone setters.
That's simple.
That's simple. So, but however, let me hop in. Simple is not easy.
Right.
Simple and easy are very different. So a lot of the things, here's the real secret sauce about culture. I don't think that it's complex. I think it can be very simple, but consistency on the simple things when we have so many distractions and so much pressure and so many expectations and we're stretched for time. And really, so if leaders were the tone setters of culture, then listening, because that's what the greatest leaders do, that has to be the anchor of your culture. And what that does, that accelerates trust and empathy and connection and camaraderie. A few other points that I'll make about the best cultures that I've seen, those that separate from the rest of the pack, beyond trust and beyond listening. 1, highly decisive. Mm-hmm. They do not suffer from paralysis at the same rate as the rest of the world. They don't suffer from the worst decision of indecision.
Yeah.
Because the best cultures, what they do, they embrace imperfect action. I don't need all the information. I'm still going to pull the trigger. I'm still going to move forward because I know that there's 1 of 2 outcomes. Either I succeed or I will learn. I succeed or I will grow. I succeed or I will adapt. And that's the beauty. That's why they don't suffer from paralysis and indecision. And then I would say maybe the last thing is we all try to make the smartest decisions. And I'm an MBA guy, I'm all that. And they tell you, oh, make the smart decision, make the smart decision. I believe that the best cultures in combination with smart make heart decisions. There is as much heart as there is head in their organizations. There's this confident sense of authenticity. They know who they are, they know what they stand for, and they understand how they want to show up, and they find a sense of alignment there. It's not head or heart, it's head and heart, and combined, those things drive their decisions and actions.
Yeah, very good, no question. Can you share a memorable success story where you helped transform an organization's culture?
Yeah, this one's a good one because I was born and bred on this belief that all culture is top-down. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that there is a top-down element. I believe the top can set the tone. Mm-hmm. But here's how I now have a slightly different view on it. Because I consulted for a top airline, 120,000 employees, 6,000 positional leaders. And I had a 2-year run with all 6,000 leaders, 1 workshop, coaching engagement at a time. Mm-hmm. And here's what I walked away with. When I would visit their headquarters, I'd go to floor 5 and they were high-fiving. I'd go to floor 6, shh, watch out, boss is around the corner. And Jim, here's what's crazy. Floor 5 and 6 weren't just the same airline, weren't just the same company. Floor 5 and 6 were the same department.
Wow.
But a drastically different weather system.
Oh my God.
And so within the bigger culture, there are infinite microclimates down to the floor of the building, down to the person.
Yeah.
So Jim, myself, everybody listening in and watching right now, when you and I, when we walk in a room or we hop on a Zoom meeting or whatever we do, we could either warm it up or we could cool it off.
Yeah.
The question is, are we aware of our own temperature?
Yeah.
And when we are, we own our weather system, we own our local culture. And here's what I have found, Jim. Top-down culture doesn't scale, local culture does. Mm-hmm. When every person takes ownership of their weather system, of their local culture, and so does the person to their left and right, that's a culture that I would bet on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the way that you put it really lays that out nicely for those that are listening to understand that. It's incredible as you go floor to floor, and to your point, just even an area of the floor, right down to the individual themselves. We've all been involved in similar situations to what you just described, not realizing that each one of us has such a huge impact on that culture. And it isn't always from the top down. I agree with you, because that president, that founder, that CEO could have all great intentions. He or she may read all the books, and they want to change the world, and we want to have a great culture in the company. But to your point, it's really up to each and every person in that company to have their own, and they do have their own, right? And what that looks like as a group changes everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you see the future of company culture given the changes in the workplace with hybrid or remote work? That seems to be a real difficult task to build a culture, and you may not see the person for 6 months. Maybe they fly into the home office every quarter or something like that. Maybe you're on a Zoom call every other day with them. But you know how those go. Those aren't the greatest, and they're very, very difficult to build any great relationship or culture, right?
Yeah, what you just described, Jim, is literally the number one thing that folks are hitting me up about. If it is, hey, I've got people problems.
Right.
You know what it used to be a couple years back and pre-pandemic? It was a lot of generational friction.
Yeah.
So boomers are over there and millennials are over there and staplers are flying across the room. That's what it used to be.
Sure.
But now we can't even agree if we should be coming into an office.
Isn't that something?
That's literally the number one problem.
Yeah.
So I'll boil it down to one word. Intention.
Okay.
And intention meaning, what is the intention of why we should come in? Mm-hmm. Is there an intention in why it's okay to stay home? If we're going to be fully in person, what's the intention? Mm-hmm. If we're hybrid, what's the intention? If we're fully remote, what's the intention? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have a crystal clear and confident answer for that, that's a losing strategy. And so a beautiful way of synthesizing this is, think back to 2019, mm-hmm. pre-pandemic. What would you have gone to an offsite for? Mm-hmm. Why would you have hosted a retreat back in 2019, 18, 17? What was the intention? And a lot of themes would come up. Team building, strategy, camaraderie, adult beverages, raising a glass, whatever it is, whatever,
right.
Bring the family. Right. But it was a human connection element.
That's right.
And that was the intention. So now I believe the office should be the new offsite. Meaning,
good way to look at it.
If you're going to come in, do it for the human stuff.
Yeah.
Do it because we need to connect. Do it because we need to all be in front of a whiteboard putting our 2024 business plan together. Don't tell me to just come and type on a keyboard for 10 hours.
Yeah.
That's not intentional.
That's right.
So I think the best owners and founders and CEOs and presidents, there's an intention, whether they're remote, whether they are hybrid, or whether they're fully in person, they're doing it all by design, and they're operating with intention.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's funny that you point that out, because it's kind of the obvious to use it as a come back to the office rather than a retreat, or maybe a weekend getaway with the team or what have you. Use that time to bring them back. And I agree with you. If it's just the ego of the boss to say, no, everybody must work, give us 3 days a week in the office or 2 days a week, it seems very arbitrary to me. It seems like, are we just checking the box to say, aha, we got everybody back in the office for 2 days a week or 4 days a week, whatever the case might be. To your point, it lacks that intention. What are we coming back in for? What are we going to do? And what does it mean to the bottom line, right? And also to our other associates.
Absolutely. And it goes back to, what do we say the number one attribute of great cultures is? Listening.
Yeah, that's right.
And so if we were to listen, hey, in an ideal world, why would we be coming into an office? What are the things that are not optimized for a virtual meeting? Like, let's listen. Let's give everybody a seat at the table versus, Jim, really what this is, and I'll be fast with this, is I just think it's a big tug of war between employers and employees, that I think employers had all the leverage pre-pandemic, and then employees maybe got too much leverage during this 2 or 3 year window. And now it's a correction in the market, and there's this fear of a bad economy and layoffs. And so employers are pulling the rope, but maybe too hard. I think the best leaders, the best cultures, it's not an ego-driven play of let me pull the rope back in the other direction. It truly is, let's hold the rope together and realize what kind of rope, what is the intention of why we should be coming in. And it's really that simple.
That's right. That's right. Two big great takeaways today: listening and what's the intention. I mean, for those people that are out there that are listening to us have this conversation, and there are many that are in this situation of managing people, building your company, and running your businesses every day. Two great takeaways, without a doubt. So thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. Really appreciate it. It's Paul Epstein, founder of Purpose Labs, former NFL, NBA executive, best-selling author, keynote speaker. If you guys ever want somebody to light up your audience, this is the guy that you want. So, Paul, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Very much appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jim. Fired up, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Great. We will. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.